Hello, friends. Welcome to Trending. Today is Thursday, March 23rd. It's about 9:40 in the morning. Hey, we're in a new room.
We are. New spot.
Where are we at, Joe?
Well, as y'all probably know, we've been renovating some of the parts of our existing building, and our offices open back up this week, and so we're in my new office space. So I was next door. Now I've migrated to the south a little bit.
Yes.
All right. And then, like this is like I don't have much on my walls right now, but we do have like new desk furniture and stuff, stand-up desk status going on in here. I do have these like soccer scarves that will hang probably on this wall, but unfortunately, the piece of furniture from my old office that we put in storage, it has like a lock on it. It's like these little drawers right here. I don't know where I put the key.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I thought maybe I handed it off to somebody more responsible, and so it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. You remember that experiment?
It sounds familiar, but I don't remember what it is.
Schrodinger put a cat in a box with poison, and the cat was alive when he put it in there. And so, like, the question is the cat dead or alive?
Oh,
and
gotcha.
the answer is yes. Right. And you have to actually observe it to know. So that was a very important experiment. Anyways, so the scarves may be in there. They may not be in there. But they'll be on the wall at some point. So I think we'll have, if we want to do it here.
Yeah, sure.
We'll have a better backdrop than just
gray wall.
Yes, whatever this grizzled gray or whatever the color might be.
Yes.
So, but anyways, we thought we'd change it up, and 2 microphones, sound quality is going to go up.
Yeah, just trying something new today.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks for you guys for watching today. So if you watched last week, we got into a good conversation, I think, about evangelism and outreach and what that kind of looks like today. Kind of prompted by the week before, I was in Orlando at the Exponential Conference, where that was the big topic, where a bunch of influential speakers were there talking about that. We kind of had to cut things short last week, and so I think you had a couple more things you wanted to say, so I thought we'd just kind of pick up from there, kind of picking up where we left off last week, and just go a little bit longer on whatever you want to say about outreach. And because it is just like our culture is a unique culture. We're talking about Jesus. You need to do it well for it to be effective, right?
Right.
What else did you want to say about that topic, Joe?
So I think that where we ended last week is that we have to have, there's been like timeless skills for evangelism, obviously like loving the Lord, following the Lord, and then like going about impacting the world around us in kind and alluring ways. We kind of have that Dallas Willard book in mind,
Yeah.
whatever. We kind of have this idea of nudging people awake because it does seem like the different set of skills. So we've got like timely skills, and then we got timeless and timely skills. I think the timely skills are important to hone in on because we have a different environment today than we did, let's say, 50 years ago. And that's simply because American life is now cluttered with many different religious options and irreligious options.
Yeah.
Some of the big Pew Research stats, the big religion surveys out there are saying now that there's not just like first generation non-believers, but there's now a tradition of families, or families where their tradition is not to have an official religion.
Right.
They like grandpa, grandma, mom and dad, and kids now, they don't even like check the box just to kind of get people off their back. And so we have a different set of skills necessary. Maybe in the past, when Christianity was like the general religious conversation in American life, it was also like inviting people to church, inviting people to evangelistic campaigns and stuff like that. Yeah. But now that there's many different religious options out there, we just have some more timely skills that we need to hone in on. Being good neighbors, probably looking after the common good, being able to engage with people who might have different religious beliefs. Something that, like a term that we could throw out there is called presuppositional apologetics. It's a mouthful.
Can always count for you for some new big words.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
It's actually as old as, I don't know, there's some philosophers in the Reformed tradition who came up with this. Tim Keller is kind of the latest one to reference it. But it's this idea that even people who aren't officially Christian, they might smuggle Christian belief into their religious preferences.
Yeah.
But it might be sitting alongside something that goes against the thing that they claim to believe. So, for instance, one that Keller uses all the time is how people could want to have a care and consideration for the poor, okay, particularly like the chronic poor in other countries, and they launch fundraising campaigns. They get behind corporations, celebrities, musicians who are doing a lot for water issues for people in like sub-Saharan Africa, right?
Which, side note, real quick, I think yesterday was World Water Day, so good timing. Because yesterday was, I think, World Water Day, where they were raising funds for water wells in Africa. So good timing.
All right, bazinga! You get credit for something that I didn't quite aware of. Yeah. So, but then, like right next to that, they would say that they are Darwinists, which are like, and really like the key thing for Darwinism is the survival of the fittest. They actually want to see the lesser. The lesser ones pass away, which gives room for something new to emerge. And so Keller would say, if he was evangelizing, he'd say, here you believe on the one hand of helping the poor, but on the other hand, like you actually have a operating software that would see if the poor actually went away, it would make room for something else. And so, which one do you want to get rid of? Because these can't sit side by side with one another. And you could say, actually, like I agree with you in lifting the plight of the poor. Like the Bible from beginning to end, from Genesis all the way through the maps, is talking about lifting the plight of the poor. And so I stand with you there. I don't stand with you there. So you could follow me to the way of Jesus if you'd like, if you want to keep this whole like preference for the poor thing. And so that we have to learn those are different gifts than what we had 50 or 60 years ago. And so all that to say, like if the church wants to embrace, and if Christians want to embrace the call to evangelism, we may have to actually let go of some previous sources that informed our way of doing that in the past. We may have to learn a new way to do that in the days to come. But look at like nearly every industry that we have out there. Every industry that you and I engage with, the industry that you work with, the industries that we engage with, either in entertainment or in commerce or even like grocery stores and stuff, everybody's making wholesale changes in a changing world. Sometimes I find it's disappointing to see that at times the church can be so slow to adapt and to make changes when they're so ready to make changes in other parts of their life. And so the church just needs to make some fundamental changes. Now, it's going to take at least 5 or 6 more trendings to talk about some of those changes. But I think maybe one thing that could go a long way in the right direction is to consider a couple of things. Number one, we need to develop some great patience in the matter of trying to influence our friends for Christianity, okay? We all make changes in our life, some more subtle than others. In fact, on Trending, we talk about some of our favorite things, you know, and like throughout the year, we tend to make some changes. But those things are kind of like small changes, right? Changing toothpaste, small change. That could happen overnight. That's understandable. A person changing their fundamental beliefs about who they are in the world and God, like that's a type of change that doesn't happen overnight. Typically. And even if it appears like it does, there's probably stuff going on underneath that's amounting to this change that seems to happen overnight. And I think sometimes in this regard, we misread sources like the book of Acts, where we see like everywhere they go, like people are making some profound changes. But if you actually get into the weeds of some of these main characters making significant changes in their life and choosing Jesus and like leaving other religions behind, many of them are in this category that Luke calls God-fearers. They're already tracking in religion. Some of them, like we find Cornelius in the middle of the book of Acts. Like he is actually waking up and praying. He's giving alms to the poor, and therefore when an angel visits him, like he's stunned obviously because an angel is visiting him. But this guy's already tracking in religion. Like he's not like completely religionless. Many other characters that they encounter along the ways, like these people they already have categories in their life, maybe even habits in their life where they're acting very religiously. And so what's happening there is there's a finishing of their story that's already been being written before they met the messenger, from one of the disciples, the messenger of Jesus. And I think that that's what happens a lot is conversion really is maybe more or less helping people finish the story, the ache, the echoes, the whispers they're already experiencing in their soul, and is carrying it to the conclusion, the destination of Jesus. And this is what, like, on a large scale, a guy like Lamin Sanneh, he's a Yale theologian, he's from Africa, and he actually, like, he talks about, he was in Africa around a time when people thought that religion was going to wane, not just in the Western world, but in the world itself. Like, we're going to emerge into secularism. we're going to leave religion behind.
Yep.
And he even notes that there might have been some attempts for these secularists to come and to implant that worldview in parts of Africa, but it never gained traction. It never did. And people wondered why that would be. Like, wouldn't you want to like leave the superstition behind and only base on like scientific facts? But what he said is, and reflecting as an African and reflecting the African story of these many different stories in the continent of Africa, he's like, we're actually very spiritual people. And what secularism tried to do is to have us cancel all of it. He's like, but what Christianity did and why Christianity's got a footing and a hearing in Africa is because we were so paralyzed in fear of all the evil sources around us. And we're trying to appease all of these angry gods. And what we heard in the message of Jesus is that he's the victor over the darkness. He's the one who can put all these things behind us and underneath our feet. Therefore, we were so eager to consider the claims of Christ. So what's going on there is finishing the already embedded story. And I think that happens not just at corporate level in communities and societies and networks of people, but I think it happens to us individually. I think we actually get into people's like faith stories, like something is already going on. And the reason they reach out to a Christian friend or the reason they pop into a church is because they've got an ache, they've got a longing, they've got questions, and they can't just like push them to the side any longer. They have to come to a resolution about it. And so what Christianity does on our best days is that we help bring resolution of these stories, these aches, to the person of Christ, and Jesus fulfills them. I just love how Paul says in Ephesians chapter 1 that Christ is bringing all things are summing up in Christ. I think we've said it before. It's the longest Greek word in the New Testament, anakephalaiosistai. Long word, but it's an accounting word. It's bringing something all the way to the sum of Christ, and that's what's happening in individual lives, and that's happening in corporate lives. So what does that matter for evangelism today? The skills that we need to learn are being curious about people's stories. Tend to be easily triggered if we disagree with them. It's not to clobber them with things that they're barely considering or not considering, but it's trying to find the evidence where Jesus is already at work. And then with faith in our hearts and with the knowledge of God in our minds and with the charity for that person in our hearts, we find a way to point those folks towards the direction of Jesus so that they can discover the God who's already been speaking to them. That's a different set of skills than inviting them to an evangelistic tent meeting or inviting them to a Judgment House evangelism opportunity at Halloween time, right? But it's actually investing in them relationally. And it's like having enough care for them to know their full story, to have sympathy for them, empathy for them, but also to listen to our big Christian faith story and the story of Jesus. And to say, okay, where is Jesus in this situation? And what should I do as his follower? How can I help? And this is actually scriptural. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul talks about how we shouldn't put hope in any one leader in the church because God's doing all the growth. Like somebody may have started this conversation with this person, but maybe we're watering, another person's going to bring it to harvest. Like there's a great mystery in how a person, develops the faith. We're just simply part of the process. Therefore, our part is to hear their story, to have enough love in our hearts for them that they don't have to come to the faith the way that we did, right? And the timing that we did. We're just simply present in a loving way, saying, I think God's up to something in your life in this way.
No, that's really good. I have a verse on the tip of my tongue. I don't know all of it, but you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a verse about, I can't remember if it's God's love or God's truth is written on our hearts, right? What is that verse? Can you remind me? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, there's like so many like that are kind of in around there, yes.
But there's a lot of verses that, kind of what you're talking about, like truth is in us, even if we don't know where it comes from, right? There's, like you were saying, there's certain things I think all of us know it's good to help the poor. It's good to do this. It's good to do that. Where does it come from? It comes from God, right? So people who aren't Christians might have those things that are Christian principles in their life, even if they don't know where it came from, right?
That's right.
And I've noticed, I've got a friend of mine who's not a believer. He's a great dad. He's a great husband. And when I'm talking to him, sometimes I'm like, oh, what you just said, that's a Christian idea. You don't know it is, but what you just said is like Jesus taught what you just said, even though you don't know that. So I think that's a great way to kind of really slowly, carefully weave that in the conversation, point out things that they're accidentally quoting scripture, right?
Yeah,
like I think that happens more than we might even notice around us.
Yeah. And it seems like people would more naturally and authentically come to faith if we're like leading them down our path.
Yeah.
Don't you have like this, like, I don't know, like this thought in your mind, like, I wonder if they're doing this just because we're friends, or like to have me get off their back, or if this is something that is a native work happening deep within them. And to get even a bit more uncomfortable, as dads, for the parents out there, like, your kids are also on their own unique faith journey.
Yeah.
And it may not look like your journey or your spouse's journey. So consider your kids. I love that. So Henry Nouwen never had kids, but he had really good advice about being a parent with kids. Okay. He's like, consider your kids like long-term house guests. Like, show them hospitality. Because they really are weaving their own story. Yeah. Now, it's going to look a lot like our story because they're our kids. Like, they're coming, like, they have our genetics, you know, like teaming through them or whatever, but also like they're exposed to us probably more than anything else. However, we will have a different faith journey than the rest of them. And some parents are anxious about that. And some parents are a little more open-handed about that. And so I guess as a dad, to other dads and moms out there, I would just say, be hospitable to your kids' questions. Be hospitable to their like avenues and pathways to God, because it may not be yours. And be steeped in the entire story of Jesus, because the same Jesus who is wide as the world but as narrow as himself may reach them in a unique way that's completely different than ours. Yeah. And I want to be there to watch and to help them curate that. I don't have to dictate how their faith develops. Yep. I think what we find is that if we try to dictate how their faith develops, we might they might sense that as controlling, and they may not generally embrace the faith like we hope that they would. Yeah. Actually works in counter against our hope and aim for our kids' lives. Right. Yeah.
And whether it's our kids or friends or family member, whoever, like, there's only so much that we can do, right? Like, we can't make those kind of decisions for them. And if we believe that it's really the Holy Spirit working in people's hearts, that should give you some freedom to. I mean, it's easier said than done. Obviously, I understand that, but like, there's only so much you can do. So with your friend or your kid or whoever, the end responsibility is not on your shoulders, right? Like we can, like you said, we can plant, we can water, we can fertilize, whatever our individual roles are, but it's not only on our shoulders for these things to happen.
Yeah. So, man.
Any closing thoughts before we wrap up today?
That's about it. I mean, we can continue to go on, but I don't. Who knows what next week will hold? But we can always shelve this conversation a bit further, because there's just so many things that we can share here. Because truly, like, one of the highlights, like, if we're stringing a pearl of Christian experiences over the whole span of our life, like helping someone discover the faith that we've come to know and love so well, that is one of them, right? Yeah. So this is something that's an evergreen conversation, something that we need to keep thinking about again and again, because not only is it a critical role of church work, but really it's the one of the most vivid experiences of Christ you and I could ever have. Yeah. And so I think it's worth talking about again and again. So we've got way more to say, but this is enough for today. Yeah. Enough to chew on for today.
It's good. Really good thoughts. Yeah. And we should say, you came up with this all on the spot. We didn't prep for this. This is all on the top of your brain today. I don't know how you do it.
It's the coffee, man. Done. It's the coffee.
Well, that's what I'm missing in my life, clearly, is the brilliance that comes with coffee consumption. All right, man. We got a busy day around here, and I think we're kind of starting to run long. So, yeah, thank you. That's great, Joe. Thanks for that. And those are good things for us to be thinking about all the time. And we should always be looking for ways to impact those around us, and just like the nudge, right? Just slight little nudges here and there to bring them closer to Jesus. It's a really good conversation. Yeah. Okay, thanks for watching today. Of course, love to have you on Sunday. Wrapping up, who might be coming this week?
That's right.
Easter's around the corner, so we're starting Easter next week. So lots going on around here, as always. We'd love to have you, whether you choose to join us in person or online. We'd love to have you. So have a great weekend, and we'll hope to see you soon.
See you next time.